Speech balloon. Please leave your thoughts and analysis requests in the comments section. Sparkles. Thumbs up, likes and bell subscribes will help us make our work even more exciting. Rainbow sparkling heart. Your support is our greatest strength. Cherry blossom wave glowing star. The story begins in a grand mansion on the edge of the city, where luxury cars lined the driveway and golden lights gleamed through towering windows. This was the home of Richard Davenport, a self-made millionaire known not only for his wealth but also for his disciplined lifestyle. He had worked tirelessly for decades, building his empire from nothing, and now he finally had everything most people only dreamed of, except peace within his family. Inside that vast mansion lived his new wife, Clarissa, and his teenage daughter, Emily. Clarissa was a woman of elegance and charm in public, always seen smiling and dressed in the finest clothes, admired by many for her beauty. But behind closed doors, her demeanor was far from kind. She had always treated Emily with a coldness that bordered on cruelty, yet Richard, often consumed by his business, had failed to see the extent of it. Emily was a gentle and quiet girl, only 15 years old. She loved books, painting, and music, and she often kept to herself. She missed her late mother deeply, who had passed away years earlier, leaving behind memories of warmth and kindness. Clarissa had stepped into the household not long after, promising to care for Emily as her own. But promises, Emily soon discovered, were not always genuine. On one particular evening, Richard decided to return home early from a business trip without informing anyone. He wanted to surprise his daughter and spend some quality time with her. For weeks, he had been away, attending meetings and conferences, and guilt weighed heavily on his heart for not being present enough. As his car pulled into the driveway, Richard noticed how strangely quiet the mansion seemed. Usually, Emily would be at the window waiting eagerly for him, but tonight there was no sign of her. His heart sank a little as he stepped inside, expecting to find her in her room. What he walked into, however, would change everything. Just as he opened the door to the living room, he froze in disbelief. There, before his very eyes, was Clarissa, his wife, towering over Emily, her voice raised in anger. Emily cowered on the floor, her small arms shielding herself as Clarissa's foot lashed out and struck her. Richard's eyes widened, his heart pounded as he tried to comprehend what he was seeing. The woman he trusted, the one he had brought into his home as a stepmother for his daughter, was kicking her without mercy. The sight seared into his mind like fire. "Clarissa!" he roared, his voice shaking the walls. Both Clarissa and Emily froze. Emily's tear-streaked face turned toward her father, her eyes filled with fear but also a flicker of hope. Clarissa, on the other hand, turned pale. She had never expected him to come home early. "Richard, this is not what it looks like," she stammered, her voice trembling as she tried to regain composure. But Richard was not fooled. He had seen enough. Anger surged within him, mixing with heartbreak. He rushed to Emily's side, kneeling down and gently pulling her into his arms. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" he whispered. Emily clung to him tightly, unable to speak through her sobs. Clarissa tried to defend herself. "She was being disrespectful, Richard. She needs discipline. You know how spoiled she can be." But Richard's gaze was sharp, filled with fury. "Discipline? This is abuse. Clarissa. You dare lay a hand, or a foot, on my daughter." His voice thundered through the room. For years, Richard had trusted Clarissa to care for Emily while he worked long hours. The realization that his daughter had been suffering in silence tore his heart apart. How many times had Emily endured this cruelty without telling him? Emily's silence spoke volumes. She buried her face in her father's chest, trembling, as though she had finally been rescued from a nightmare. Richard stroked her hair, promising softly, "It's over now. I won't let anyone hurt you again." Clarissa, panicked, tried to change her approach. "Richard, please, you don't understand. She provokes me, she..." "Enough." Richard cut her off. His voice was like steel. "There is no excuse for this. You've shown your true colors tonight, Clarissa. The atmosphere in the room was tense. Clarissa, realizing her mask had slipped, tried to plead, but Richard was already making up his mind. He had sacrificed everything for his daughter's well-being, and now, faced with the truth, his path was clear. "Pack your things," he said coldly. "You're leaving this house tonight." Clarissa's eyes widened in shock. "You can't be serious. After everything I've given up for you." "You gave up nothing," Richard spat. "You gained wealth, comfort, and a home. But you failed at the one thing I asked of you, to treat my daughter with kindness." Emily watched silently, her tears slowing as she realized her father was standing up for her. For the first time in a long while, she felt safe. Clarissa, still desperate, tried one last attempt. "Think about your reputation, Richard. A divorce, a scandal, it will ruin you." But Richard shook his head. "The only thing that will ruin me is failing my daughter. I'd rather lose everything than let her suffer another day under your cruelty." That night, Clarissa was forced to leave the mansion. Her pleas and threats echoed through the halls, but Richard did not waver. He locked the door behind her, holding Emily close as if to shield her from all the darkness that had haunted her. Later, as they sat together in Emily's room, Richard gently asked, "Why didn't you tell me, Emily? Why didn't you say anything?" Emily hesitated, then whispered, "I was afraid you wouldn't believe me, or that you'd send me away." Richard's heart shattered at her words. He hugged her tighter, vowing, "I will always believe you. You're my daughter, my world. I'm so sorry I wasn't here sooner." Over the next few weeks, Richard made changes in his life. He hired a counselor to help Emily heal from the trauma. He adjusted his work schedule to spend more time at home, determined never to let his career come before his child again. Slowly, Emily began to smile more, her laughter returning like sunlight breaking through dark clouds. Clarissa, meanwhile, tried to fight back legally, demanding a share of Richard's fortune. But her reputation was ruined after her cruelty was exposed. Servants who had witnessed her behavior came forward, confirming Richard's suspicions that Emily had suffered for a long time. Clarissa's lies unraveled, leaving her with nothing but bitterness. Richard, however, only grew stronger. His bond with Emily deepened, forged through pain but now rooted in love and trust. He learned that wealth meant little if he couldn't protect the one person who mattered most. One evening, months later, as they sat in the garden under the stars, Emily looked up at her father and said, "Thank you for saving me." Richard smiled softly, brushing her hair back. "You saved me too, Emily. You reminded me of what truly matters." The journey was not without scars, but together they found healing. Emily blossomed into a confident young woman, knowing her father would always stand by her side. And Richard, the millionaire who had once measured his worth in numbers, discovered the greatest treasure of all was the love of his daughter. The Davenport mansion was always a place of whispers, filled with staff who knew more than they said. For months, some of the housekeepers had noticed bruises on Emily's arms, her timid steps, and the way she flinched whenever Clarissa entered the room. They pitied her but feared speaking up, for Clarissa's temper was infamous. Richard was rarely around, and when he was, Clarissa became the perfect actress, sweet, affectionate, the picture of a devoted stepmother. Emily had lived in fear, her once bright eyes dimmed by constant criticism. "You're weak," Clarissa would sneer. "Your father spoils you. Without me, you'd be nothing." Every insult carved deeper wounds than the physical blows. Yet Emily endured in silence, hoping her father would one day see the truth. The night Richard returned unexpectedly was nothing short of fate. He had nearly decided to stay another day on his business trip, but something tugged at his heart. He missed his daughter too much. That decision became the turning point of their lives. When Richard caught Clarissa in the act, it wasn't just shock that gripped him, it was guilt. Guilt for all the times he had chosen meetings over family dinners, for every moment Emily needed him and he wasn't there. As he held her trembling body in his arms, he silently vowed to never make the same mistake again. Clarissa's removal from the house that night was only the beginning. The next morning, news of the confrontation began to spread among their social circle. Rumors twisted the truth, with some claiming Richard overreacted, others suggesting Clarissa had long been jealous of Emily. High society thrives on scandal, and the Davenport name was suddenly on every lip. Richard, however, didn't care about the whispers. His focus was on Emily. He enrolled her in therapy, hired a private tutor so she wouldn't feel pressured at school, and encouraged her to pursue her love of art. For the first time in years, Emily felt her father truly saw her. But Clarissa was not finished. Humiliated and stripped of her luxurious lifestyle, she hired lawyers and demanded a share of Richard's wealth. She claimed he had fabricated the abuse story to get rid of her. The court battle that followed threatened to reopen Emily's wounds. During the hearings, Richard stood firm. He brought forth testimonies from the staff, medical reports of Emily's injuries, and even a secret diary Emily had kept, documenting the torment she endured. Page after page revealed Clarissa's cruelty in Emily's own handwriting. The courtroom gasped as the truth became undeniable. Clarissa's mask finally shattered. Her charm no longer worked. Her lies crumbled. Judges and jurors saw her for what she truly was, a woman driven by greed, incapable of love or compassion. The verdict came swiftly. She was denied any claim to Richard's fortune and barred from contacting Emily ever again. For Emily, the trial was both painful and healing. Painful because she had to relive memories she wanted to forget, but healing because she finally felt heard. Her father never left her side, holding her hand through every testimony, assuring her with his presence that she was no longer alone. Life after the trial brought new beginnings. Richard scaled back his empire, delegating responsibilities to trusted partners so he could be more present at home. He and Emily began traveling together, first small trips, then longer journeys to places Emily had always dreamed of seeing. Paris, Rome, Kyoto, all became chapters in their healing journey. On one of these trips, Emily stood before a famous painting in a European museum, her eyes wide with wonder. She whispered to her father, "Someday, I want my art to hang here too." Richard smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "And it will, Emily. I'll make sure the world sees your gift." Back home, Emily's confidence blossomed. She began entering art competitions, and her work caught the attention of galleries. Critics marveled at the emotional depth in her paintings, not realizing they were born from years of silent suffering. What had once been pain transformed into beauty through her brushstrokes. Richard watched in awe. The little girl who once cowered in fear was now standing tall, her talent shining. And he knew that none of it would have been possible if he hadn't come home that night, if he hadn't chosen family over business. But the story didn't end there. One evening, months later, Richard received an anonymous letter. Inside was a warning: "Clarissa hasn't forgotten. She's watching." His blood ran cold. Was it possible that Clarissa, despite the court's ruling, still lingered in the shadows, waiting for revenge? At first, he considered dismissing it as a prank. But then strange things began happening. Emily's art studio was broken into, her canvases slashed. Their dog barked incessantly at night, as if sensing someone outside. Richard tightened security, unwilling to take any risks. Emily, though frightened, refused to let fear control her again. "She took enough from me already, Dad. I won't let her take my happiness too," she declared. Her courage amazed Richard, who realized just how much his daughter had grown. Eventually, investigators traced the harassment back to a friend of Clarissa's, a desperate attempt to intimidate them. Clarissa herself had fled abroad, her reputation destroyed and her wealth gone. She would never again hold power over their lives. With that final shadow lifted, Richard and Emily embraced a new chapter. Emily's artwork gained national recognition, and Richard proudly attended every exhibition. The bond between father and daughter grew unbreakable, forged in fire but shining like gold. In quiet moments, Richard often reflected on the night he returned home early. One decision, he thought, changed everything. Had he delayed even a day, Emily might have lost all hope. Instead, That night became the moment they reclaimed their lives. Emily, too, carried the memory, but not with bitterness. Instead, she used it as inspiration, pouring her resilience into every painting, showing the world that even from pain, beauty can be born. Years later, at Emily's first major gallery opening, Richard stood in the crowd, tears in his eyes, as critics and admirers praised her work. Emily took the stage, her voice steady as she addressed the audience. "These paintings are pieces of my journey," she said. "But more than that, they are proof that love and courage can heal even the deepest wounds." She glanced at her father, who smiled proudly. Their eyes met, and in that moment, nothing else mattered, neither wealth nor status, only the bond they shared. Richard realized he had once been known as a millionaire businessman, but now he was something far greater. A father who had protected his daughter, stood by her, and watched her rise from the shadows into the light. And Emily, once broken and afraid, now stood as a beacon of strength, inspiring countless others with her story. Her journey was proof that darkness cannot extinguish the light when love is strong enough to fight for it. In the end, the world remembered not the scandal, not the whispers of gossip, but the story of a father and daughter who faced cruelty and came out stronger, together. It was a reminder to all, sometimes, the greatest battles are fought not in boardrooms or courts, but within the walls of our own homes. And the greatest victories are not measured in wealth, but in love, protection, and family.